Welcome to the Business of Drinks, where we go behind the bottle, interviewing beverage innovators and icons about how they built their businesses.
We take a data-driven approach, analyzing the brands, products, and categories that get customers and consumers excited.
And we cover several drinks categories, from wine, beer, and spirits to non-alcoholic drinks, as well as THC, adaptogen, and functional beverages.
So whether you're working in drinks or just interested in the stories behind your favorite brands, join us each week as we explore how companies are unlocking growth at every stage in the game.
Thanks for joining us, and let's dive in. Hello, BOD crew, and welcome to Business of Drinks, where we go behind the bottle, interviewing some of the drinks industry's most innovative entrepreneurs. I'm Erica Ducey, joined by my co-host, Scott Rosenbaum.
Hi, Erica. I am so excited about today's show. Today we have Mary Taylor of the eponymously named Mary Taylor Wines. And Mary is just so incredible, right? Almost seemingly out of nowhere has she gone to create this incredible company that now sells 1,000,000+ bottles annually. She's in 47 states, 4 countries. And, it just started with her bootstrapping this company, her brand into existence not all that long ago.
That's right, Scott. Mary identified a white space in the industry that no one else saw. She created what she calls a bridge between big brand and small grower by turning her import label into a recognizable brand of its own. And really, no one else has done this. So, yes, you can think of Kermit Lynch in this way. People see his name on the back of a label and they know his taste, and maybe they'll be into trying those wines because they've tried one before. But with Mary Taylor Wines, we're talking about right on the front of the label, it says Mary Taylor, and people have tried the wines and then they go on to try other wines that they are completely unfamiliar with. These small appellation wines, but they know this is a style that I can trust. I've tried it before. And that was a major innovation that has helped consumers try smaller European wines.
Yeah, by inverting, right? By putting what is implicit and making it explicit, by putting the back label on the front.
Right.
She's done what a lot of people said was impossible. She's offered terroir forward, low intervention wines and made them accessible, right? These are $12 to $18 retail price point wines. And these are wines that if she didn't do that, she might not have been able to build trust with consumers. And what is brand building if not trust building? And in that, she's been able to tell the stories of family owned vineyards, many of them practicing organic farming methods, and really popularize them.
The revolutionary concept here is how she's democratizing access to terroir driven wines. It's like she's created a safety net for wine curious consumers who want to explore beyond the big commercial brands. And that's really what it is. These are small, farmer driven, minimally processed wines that really reflect terroir. And up until the point that her brand came onto the market, it was hard for people to find these wines because they didn't recognize a bigger umbrella brand over them that gave them trust in trying something new.
Yeah, it's like having a gold star on front of the label that validates and builds confidence, and that trust again, right? It's not easy to do. What's even more impressive about Mary's whole story is that she bootstrapped her entire operation. She started with nothing. She scaled with essentially zero capital and built what she now estimates is, $20 million in global retail sales. And, again, while much of the wine and drinks industry at large has had a difficult 2024, she grew about 16% last year, really bucking the trend.
It's totally remarkable. So, okay, in this episode, we will deep dive into Mary's journey from her early days working in cheese shops and dragging a bag around Manhattan with all those bottles, to how she grew and scaled the brand. And we'll explore really her unique approach to building and running a lean operation. That's another key here, a lean operation. And then her perspective on scaling without outside investment and her vision for the future of wine retail.
So grab a glass and join us for this absolutely fascinating conversation about building a wine brand and what seems to be a wine empire that's truly changing how Americans discover and enjoy European wines.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Is your drinks brand looking to start or expand import and distribution?
Whether you're seeking to enter new markets or you're unhappy with a current distributor and desiring a better fit, you should know about Swig Partners.
Founded by industry experts Eric Siegelbaum and Amy Troutmiller, Swig takes the guesswork and the legwork out of distribution strategy. Swig helps brands and distributors find the right fit for long-term relationships and sales success.
US-based importers and distributors should reach out too. With Swig, they can explore new products for free. And brands, you can get $100 off by mentioning Business of Drinks. Find out more at swigpartners.com/business of drinks. That's swigpartners.com/business of drinks.
Mary, thanks so much for coming on the Business of Drinks.
A pleasure to be here.
Yay. Well, my first question is I really want to hear the story of Mary Taylor Wines. So tell me about the company and how it came to be.
Yeah. So after, and thanks for having me. After just being in like I think many elements of the business it's endless because it spans the world, but I had an inspiration. I was like, people that don't know wine, that kind of like wine and aren't comfortable being experts, they gravitate towards brands. And I was like, I come out of like hipster cool wine world and also like fine wine world and living in France. And I was like, how do we get the people to buy like the grower wine? And how do we get people to drink like Madiran and, Montbazillac and like stuff that is so cool because it's so historic? What should we do to get them to pick up those bottles instead of like, a big box brand that, is owned by Constellation or whatever? And so I just was like, why don't I just take all of my products and make them all look identical to each other? Mm-hmm. So here are two of them I just pulled out. We have this really simple design. And the point is to say like, the design looks legitimate. It looks serious. And I created, so that I can go, this is like a 30-year journey I've been on. So I don't want to like bore you all with my background story. I've made that mistake before. But yeah, I had this great inspiration and then I just, I launched it and here we are, doing pretty well in this like kind of crappy wine market as it is right now.
Well, tell me a little bit about your background before starting the company and remind me, what year did it start?
I created the idea for my label somewhere in like 2013, and I launched it when I was the French portfolio manager for Massenoy Imports. And that was like the first real launching of two wines from Bordeaux, and they kind of allowed me to have those. And then, knowing, my ambition was to really expand and build my own company. I'd had this idea for a long, long time, and they were kind of uncomfortable with that. So I branched off from them and started my LLC in 2017. So that's when. Nothing has like a direct answer. It's so complicated. But yeah, I come out of Massachusetts. I was raised in a ritzy town, but we were like the family that ate Chef Boyardee and like lived crappily. But everyone else had like braised whatever on the, just the best, most beautiful homes. And it's funny being like kind of the poor kid in a rich town, because like you're holding the catering platter, offering people bacon wrapped scallops at all the parties, but you're being exposed to like every inside track of like how people entertain. And so I got really interested in like Martha Stewart and Julia Child and all that. And I started putting like mint leaves in my iced tea or lemonade pitchers. And, so that was way back when, but I worked with this catering company, and I worked with a cheese shop. So I learned the like language of cheese, and that was the intro to the appellation system. So that was a really great accident that before I was in the wine business, I was in the cheese business. And coming through that, you just really have a sense of like geography and appellation more than I think most.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, then I moved to New York, and I'd worked in restaurants in Boston, and I moved to New York, and I got a job at Sotheby's. There's like a whole lot of, you'll hear about it in my Netflix special. It's coming soon. But I worked in like super fine wine auctions, and I opened a retail shop in Lower Manhattan, and I ran and bought all the wine for that for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Burgundy to like be with my then boyfriend, and I ended up writing like a newsletter, and then we broke up a few years later, and I started in wholesale, and it was just like that's when the idea happened. And I was like, but I had no money, none, zero, and so I had to like take this long road to launch it.
Yeah. So tell me about the white space. So like, what is the white space in the market that you would say that Mary Taylor Wines fills?
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard some feedback. My friend went into a random shop 3,000 miles away from me over the weekend, and discovered that the buyer knew my project and like loved the project. And so she's like, "What do you love about it?" And he was like, "There's just nobody doing something like this." And I really appreciate that. I mean, I don't. The idea is like I'm trying to merge big brand with small grower.
Yeah.
And that was like something in the beginning I got a lot of heat for by like the elitist people who sell you $50 vinegar. Sorry. I'm getting over it, but I was very upset for a while because all of our wines are like really true testaments to their areas and terroirs. And there was like a contingent of people that would like say that our wines were like, oh, they're just commercial. And I'm like, what does it mean? What does it mean commercial? Yeah, these are family businesses and they're for profit, but they make wine that is like not manipulated, adulterated. It has all these like HVE certifications and like are made by an earnest family in like the indigenous style of the hometown. Like, don't tell me this is like, whatever. I don't want to throw another brand under the bus, but who can we throw under the bus? Kim Crawford. This is no Kim Crawford. But I was like, why doesn't like cool, intelligent wine community attract your everyday person? And it was like nobody in New York City, except for like 1% knows if Sancerre is a place or a grape. They just don't know. And they don't necessarily care. There's all these people taking all these wine classes and wine books, and people are so confused. And I was like, what if we just allow them, quote unquote, a safe space, meaning that I'm not trying to waste your money. That was what I mean by safe. Opportunity to try a bunch of like things you might not have tried before and see if you like our general style. And then you can come back and try new things. Cause we have 47 wines.
Wow. Yeah.
In our brand. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, so it's interesting because I think, you picked up on a really interesting, insight there that a lot of wine has not fully unlocked, which is like you called it, it's like the dominance of the brand. And I think that largely has been one of the challenges for wine where, you go to, Whole Foods or the convenience store or what have you, and you pick up a drink because you know the brand. But with wine, you walk into a wine shop and it can just be overwhelming because you may just not recognize any of the labels, and it doesn't, you have no idea about the curation of the place, and you have to kind of go on this journey of getting to trust the retailer and then like trust some of the brands. But I think that, from my perspective, it seems like what Mary Taylor Wines brought to the table is one, that uh, ability to explore regions without having it be too expensive. And I think the price point is really the key there. I don't know the full range of wines, but most of the bottles that I see are in that kind of sweet spot, like a $12 to $18 range on shelves. And so the sticker shock of like trying a new region or style that you may not be familiar with seems to have been alleviated with these products. So, like tell me more
Yeah.
about like how you approach that, and how you approach the mix of terroirs and regions that you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, thanks. That's a lot. So, one, I think Europe sees the brand as the appellation. Like if you think about Brie or Gruyere or something, I think Europe is saying like Gruyere's the brand. Like, and within that, or Bordeaux's the brand, or Champagne's the brand. And within that, there's like, you can explore all these different makers of that. And that's why there's like the E now in the appellation system.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, okay, like I know the taste of like, this is terrain rosé. Like I know what terrain is. I lived in Tours for like 3 months. I know less about Castille Leon. I would love to know what it is. There's like the grapes on the back and everything. But I think that because there's 233,000 different products in just the wine category in the US, you're right, people have to go through this like really slow and inefficient and embarrassing. All of us stare at our phones all day. Like somebody asked me to like call them to set up I was like, calls, I don't have an email. Like so like how do we so I was just like, what if that is exactly that confusion where it's like the curiosity's there. Also, nobody in my like peer network, I guess, in like New York wine, was thinking about the $11.99 space.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, like, we kill it. Like Gascon Blanc is so good. The farm is so good. The farming's amazing. We only use Colombard, Uni Blanc, and Gros Manseng because whereas everyone's like throwing a ton of Sauvignon into their blends. And like we lock in the price, we commit to, something like 12,000 cases a year plus. And so we're able to lock in a really good price. And we're able to get it on shelves for like $12.
Yeah.
And like people in Vermont, rural Vermont, who like care about farming and stuff that feels farm to table and artisanal stuff that don't have money, lots of money, they love this.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I'm tapping into like these, we're in how many states? We're in like 47 states now and like 4 other countries. And it's kind of like, whereas New York is our best market ever, always seems to will be, but like we're just making like Georgia, Minnesota, Wisconsin, like everywhere is receptive. And we kind of tap into like maybe a more rural not like hipster urban elitist, or it's like $12 for a bottle of wine is actually expensive if you are comparing that to like the house wine at Whole Foods, which is like $4,
Right.
Or $2 Chuck or like Trader Joe's, blah, blah, blah. So like, how do I approach appellations? Well, so I have a couple of tiers. I just showed you 2 wines that are in 2 different tiers. So like this Castille Leon, you see it just like has my little logo, but you see the like font is very recognizable. Like it looks just like the other one. This was my second line, so I call it MT2. These are the ones that are like, very much under $15, ideally. Sorry for my boutique retailers that charge a little more, but that's okay. But these are all IGTs, which
Uh-huh.
is like the new designation for table wine, because the Europeans have to just make everything
Totally.
that much more confusing. So like I have 9. If you go on my website, you can like see it's empty.wine. You can see how we classify. But these are our entry level price point only. And these are probably our most complicated things. I don't know a lot of sommeliers that know like what Agenais is, and that's an IGT that surrounds this village of Agen, south of Bordeaux. The IGT system is totally
Mm.
not understood. We
Yeah.
have like Veneto, Gascon, all IGTs. Gascon, I think Cote de Gascon is probably the most famous, and I'm hoping they never go to appellation status, because then I have to just shift it all around. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then our second tier has like my signature on it. I have more of these than anything. There's like 25. This was my firstborn. Somebody actually endeavored to like copy this.
Mm.
All the drama. It'll be on the Netflix special. But so I put my name on the front because I was like, wait a second. Firstly, let's not let anyone take credit for the work and the idea and insight I had.
Yeah.
But secondly, like, why should the import name be on the back?
Yeah.
Like, why are we overestimating people's abilities? Like, front label, brand, boom.
Right.
And yeah,
Right.
that makes, believe me, the amount of people that said, who is this woman and who does she think she is? They all thought I was like some heiress to a fortune, and I just was like, I am Mary Taylor Brand, and I'm like, no, I like dragged the 50-pound roller bag for 7 years, baby, on that subway. Like, I put my time in.
I love that. Yeah. So tell me about the top selling products.
Yeah, well, Gascon is number 1. Number 2 is Bordeaux Blanc. It's so good. I'm so excited about the 2023 vintage across the board. We are the biggest buyer of Anjou Blanc. Our Chenin Blanc is like, I think that's number 3. So all whites in the top 3, which is great. I love drinking white wine, especially good, grippy, rich, amazing, chemical-free, glyphosate-free white wines made by families that I love. And so those 3, 2023 in the Loire Valley got some botrytis, and it's like so pretty.
Oh, nice.
It's my best vintage ever. Then we have Bordeaux Rouge, which is it's such a crowded category, but ours is uniquely unoaked. So it's like very red fruit, perfumey, grippy, and we just keep it away from extract. I've found that like modern day, like affordable Bordeaux is going the way of Yellowtail. It's like, they're using centrifuge, micro ox. They're, just basically softening it down and then putting a flavor over it. And I'm like, that is not terroir. Like, that's not what I define. And then the 5th bestseller is our Douro Rouge, which is like an indigenous blend of Touriga Nacional and the other grapes. But and also unoaked and foot stomped and horse plowed and hand picked and everything.
Yeah.
But like all of these wines that I mentioned are, well under $20. I feel that, and my curation is not, there is no actual, it's like what I'm like right now. I'm kind of focused on Italy. I'm launching a few things from Italy. I have an import book, so I have a couple choice domains that I also import in their label, and then I have a higher tier of Mary Taylor wine. I have the MT3 line, I call it, just because for lack of a better name, but it's a little bit more fine and rare. So we have like Coteau de Genois, the village next to Sancerre, and everyone says, "Are you going to have a Sancerre?" And I'm like, why? Like it's so much cheaper to have a Genoa, and it's the same, like it's the literal yeast of Sancerre in the wine. Like it's amazing. And then like a Valtellina is coming and a Julianas, and like just a little bit more like elegant and choice products in the higher tier. So that's, if I could just like, I have to grow, or I could grow really fast. Like I could have 700 wines tomorrow because I love curating this, but but the real work is selling the wine.
Definitely. Well, tell me about that. Tell me about building the sales organization. Like, so you start this brand in 2017, and take me through like how did the sales org start? I imagine it was just
Yep.
you, and then to the point like where are we now?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I had the, as I said, I had the idea like 4 something years earlier. So I ended up knowing that I didn't like have a lot of fluency with business. So I went to get my MBA at NYU.
Oh wow.
I was doing pretty well as a sales rep, and I was able to, it was before the 2017 Tax Act. I was able to expense it on my personal expenses to get an MBA. So I did that. And I won a fellowship at NYU. And they helped me like create the company, which was awesome. I went through a lot of very complex, like I learned about series rounds and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I ended up quitting my sales rep job in 2017. A lot happened then. And I took a job as a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch because honestly, I just couldn't build a wine company while having a job for a wine company. You know what I mean? Like it
Right.
was too conflicty. So the first thing I did was I learned by going through these like pitching investors. They flew me to Silicon Valley. I learned all this stuff. Was that I don't want investors. Like if I can avoid investors, that would be. I mean, the money that investors give you becomes very expensive, and I learned that really easily. Like even $250,000 for 10% is like that would be terrible. Like to
Yeah.
have to answer to somebody, and $250,000 now is not like even worth 10%. No way, So I said no investors. So I just kind of, but because I'd been on the streets so long, I used my friend Kittel's clearinghouse. I don't know if it still exists. It's called the Vine Collective. And she had, there's all these clearinghouses people use when they want to have a small book. And there's tons of people running around New York and all over. So I did that and I started selling wine direct. There's still a lot of placements down like around Wall Street where I was working. My job was finance, like getting assets. So like we were basically expected not to be in the office. So I ran around and sold wine and like occasionally financial services along with it. So it was actually really helpful to have that position. And now I'm a client and they don't hate me. I did get strategically fired, but whatever. We'll talk about probably tax avoidance. So let's not discuss. But then I remember one day I was sitting at the bank in my blazer and I was like supposedly cold calling for banking things. And I called Mies, a wine distributor in Boston. And I was like, hey, I have a wine brand and I got your name from like the Concord Cheese Shop. And and they were like, oh, no, we don't do brands. We do natural wine only. And I was like, no, that's why I'm calling you. And they're like, well, what do you mean you have a brand? And I was like, well, it's all like grower wines. They're just like streamlined. Does that make sense? And they're like, huh. And I'm like, if it helps you, like I got all of my training and inspiration from like Joe Dresner. And they're like, Joe Dresner, okay, we'll talk,
Nice.
And it was,
yeah.
And so then I had 2 companies in Massachusetts fighting over representing. And then I called a guy in Maine and he took me on. And that was the beginning. And I just kept like cracking in. And then I guess the pandemic, I like moved out of New York and was living in a cottage in the woods in Connecticut and like had my cat, like I had nothing else to do. And so I just built and built and built and built. And I shipped samples out. A friend of mine bought a warehouse on like the Opportunity Zone deal. So talking about the Tax Act, like I benefited on before it was enacted and after it was like, but so he offered me some warehouse space and we ended up getting it zoned with the city of New Haven and completely racked and climate control. And now it's like a fully, like there's 3 loading zones. And some guy asked me like, little lady, can you get a 53-foot trailer? I'm like, I can get 3 in there. Don't you think? My girl, of course I can. So we built a warehouse and then I hired some really good people. Jen, who doesn't work for us anymore because she had a baby, God bless. And Nicole, like kind of the 3 of us, there's like 3 hard knuckled girls from New England, hardworking ladies. And we just kind of built like a really efficient system. And I said no to the like more expensive shipper that everyone uses. I won't mention names. And I said no to, even temp controlled shipping. Like sometimes, like, I've been burned once or twice on it, and I've had to like discount, clear out something here and there. But for the most part, like a thermal blanket in shipments is like, I think, pretty adequate, especially since the price of the wine is so material to the
Mm,
buyer. Everybody wants to use the fanciest temp control, blah, blah, blah. And temp control is terrible for the environment. You're running a refrigerator and all that exhaust across the ocean. But like, we've done a million tests. If you put a thermal wrap, which is another problem with waste, but I think it's better than refrigeration. In the hotter months, you can test the temperature pretty easily, and see. And like, we've only once, when our container was delayed in Jamaica for like 5 weeks, we had like some heat problems. But other than that, we've been really lucky, and the wines are all fresh and
yeah.
delicious. And so,
That's amazing. All right.
yeah,
So
it's pretty good.
now
Yeah.
we get to the point where, you're at the point of, here we are going into 2025. Sales are now north of $5 million. And you saw growth last year, 2024, of about 16%. So why do you think that Mary Taylor Wines is experiencing gains while so much of the industry is facing declines?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think I've been around just long enough where there's a legitimacy. People have seen the brand. Yeah, I mean, I have markets that are up 80%.
Wow.
Like Georgia's up 80%, and Michigan's up a lot, and California's up. I mean, I did shift around and like kind of switch up some distributors here and there where things weren't working. Some of our efforts, in terms of like national accounts, have paid off. I just think we've been around long enough to like play the game really well. We never ever raised our prices. We have
Mhm.
never raised our prices. We're not, like, my price in 2017 is the same price as it is today.
Yeah.
So I actually probably took a pretty healthy margin back then, and I've shrunk my margin a little bit, but in exchange, I get more of the volume.
Right.
So people love the price point, and they're like, how do you do this? And I'm like, I keep it so lean and mean. I have
Yeah.
nobody to answer to, no private equity, no investor, no dudes. I have just me and my like 3 people, our warehouse, just all the ways that we keep efficient. I feel like people are just like, how do you do it? And I'm like, you just have to be like really lean. You can't like have the director of communications role at 100 plus K. No,
Totally.
no. Like,
Yeah.
I have no communication. I have 7,000 followers on Instagram. Like, I've worked really hard for them. Thank you for
Yeah.
following. But there's like, it's not like I have, 7 million or whatever people have. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not trying to be a personality either. I like kind of regret like having a name that's out there sometimes, are you the Mary Taylor, I get. And I'm like, like, I'm not exactly famous for like the big self-esteem, but so yeah, we just keep it lean, and I think our selections are cool. Like,
Mhm.
it's saying like, hey, we're bringing something cool at a low price,
Yeah.
so that, like, I think one of your questions was, who's your target buyer? And I'm like, well, it's like everyone that is wine curious and like a little too smarter than people that would buy the like Kim Crawford or big box. Like, it's people that are like just a little bit more interested in what they're consuming.
Yeah.
And then I think it's because we have so many different wines, and people are like, oh my God, they have this one and that one. And it becomes kind of like Pokemon.
Yeah.
But like, my dad is like an 84-year-old retired professor of poetry that's like doesn't exist anymore. And my brand is perfect. He's cheap. He likes $11 wine.
Yeah.
And he used to buy Oyster Bay, and now he buys Mary Taylor,
Yeah. Well, and it's
hopefully.
you bring up such a good point, which is just the appeal of, minimally processed wines at that price point is huge. Like, the audience potential is huge there. And so many of the wines that you can get at that price point are like pretty confected or like very, very processed. And so if you're someone who's kind of interested in like getting to know more about wine, it just seems like, oh, okay, I keep on seeing this Mary Taylor brand working with small growers, like, let me try this as an entry point. And like, oh, it happens that I like these wines more than some of the other big brands that I've been trying. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that really is just like the secret sauce there. And then I'm curious to know, is it like what, when you think about kind of the long term of Mary Taylor wine, is the goal really to grow much bigger than you are right now? Or, is this level and scale kind of like feeling like a good, like what's sort of the 5-year
Yeah.
plan?
By the way, I love this conversation because I feel like it's just so brass tacks, and that's me. I'm like a triple Taurus.
Awesome.
But yeah, so firstly, like just going right back to what is appealing, the flavor I think is really important
Yeah.
because no aromatic yeast in the whites, no pandering, and no oak in the red. Like yeah, I can't tell you how, like, when I open a wine that's grippy and mineral and fresh and red, that's like, yummy. I love it,
Yeah.
and when it's like soft and sweet and confection, I'm like, ugh, and that's my palate. And I'm not saying you're wrong if you like, because a woman walked into a tasting I was doing at Best Buy Liquors in Coney Island, and she had like a big fur. She was Ukrainian or something, lip liner. She had one sip of my Anjou Rouge, which, by the way, is so stunningly beautiful and perfumed and ethereal. And she goes, ugh, sour, and walked away. But I was like, okay, you're a Josh drinker or whatever, even, maybe even more oaky and sweet. That you're not my market.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like, that's fine. You do you, girl. But so yeah, the idea, like, I think when people get to know our reds, they're like, oh, wait a second. Like our Tempranillo from Navarra next to Rioja is like totally naked. It's totally unoaked and grippy. And so once you know that, like, maybe you feel safe. But so I have 46 wines and a Valtellina on the way. So that's 47. Yeah, I mean, if I could, I had this whole fantasy about launching a Galicia book. I have a Ribera Sacra project. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. And like, I have a couple wines, like a wine in Vitoria, like a Frappato. I wanted to, I just have like these great inspirations, and my team would probably roll their eyes and be like, stop. Because it's, there are wines that really sell and things that have hit so hard.
Yeah.
And then wines that just kind of don't as much. And I feel bad about those projects. Like my favorite wine, I think, I usually rail against the term favorite, but this is so dear to my heart, is our Menchuela, and it's a Moravia Agria. And it's like, as if you were like Romani Conti made a wine in this area. It's like, has so much purity. It's like a Burgundy lover's Spanish wine.
Yeah.
And it's literally $13.99. I drink it at home. It's organic, certified. I cannot sell it. I don't know why. It really hurts my heart because it's such a great. But I think the word Menchuela is just a little too foreign,
Sure.
even with the Mary Taylor. So I don't know. Like I think, of course, I'd like to be more successful, but like I'm really happy where we are. I think you asked me like what my exit strategy was, and it's literally nothing. I am not selling. If Constellation Brands or Gallo are so or a private equity or Sequoia or whoever is so intelligent that they're going to buy my company, then I'm less intelligent. Like, no. My company will never be sold to some big money, because that's the whole point of the company. It's like a defense of the growers and the farmers. I'd rather leave my company to my employees than sell it. The lifestyle I get to live is so great. Yes, taking a check for $80 million is probably what it's worth now. Like, sounds sexy, but like, what would I do?
Yeah.
Like, play like what mahjong on the beach in Hawaii. Like I don't know. I probably develop a drug habit. Like I don't. I love this journey. Actually, I'd like to start a private equity company. I have a fantasy
Yes.
project on Rockaway Beach. I want to create this Sicilian fish market, cheese, like beer cafe, and like a cool wine store next door.
I love that. That's so much fun.
Yes.
Lots of ideas in your retirement.
No retirement.
Yeah, exactly. No retirement. Tell me about, I know that I see the brands, I see the brand a lot on retail shelves, but I'm curious to know about on-premise. Is there what's the on-premise, off-premise mix?
That's a good question. I think today it's like maybe 35, 65. Yeah, it's something. Yep. It's about like 40, it's like 40% on, 60% off or something.
Okay.
It definitely leans off. I think part of it is like the brand. Part of it is like it without the packaging and the like visceral experience of the wine. Yes, our name is on a lot of lists. I do tell people not to use Mary Taylor if they don't want to, because like you wouldn't put Neil Rosenthal on the wine list. That makes no sense. And I am merely like, I call myself a negociant, but I'm merely the importer with like a weird convention about my labeling. The grower name is like right here. This is Luc Poulin. And like, so the wine is a Luc Poulin Touraine Rosé. Like it's not rocket science. So like, I think because on restaurant lists, are we like dispersed into normal wine business land?
Sure.
The power of the brand isn't there. I feel like retail is definitely like where we clean up the most.
Yeah.
On, off. Let's see. Yeah. Sorry, I can't read. Yeah. So it's, about 30, 70 actually. So yeah, I'd love to get more restaurant business. That's a wonderful place to be. But, there's a lot of mouths to feed in this business. And I feel like we've carved out a really good space in it, especially being that we're so popular in retail. So I don't know. We'll see. But we're not in, by the way, we don't sell in Costco or Total.
Yeah.
Or any like Albertson, Publix. We love being in bottle shops and like small chains, and we work with this amazing chain in Michigan called Bush's. Like we're really well presented in like 16 stores. Like that's been awesome. We're so proud to work with them.
Yeah.
I don't have like any, like I know that people are like, oh, I don't want grocery store wine in my wine list, and I'm like, well, yeah, I hear you, but like I also want to sell these wines to everybody far and wide. And if I can take shelf space away from, Apothic or some garbage like that, like I'm doing people a favor. Like I'm going to take, even if it's at Walgreens or, I see Bernard, what's his name from the Languedoc?
Oh,
whatever,
right.
Yeah, whatever.
Bertrand. Yeah.
Bertrand.
Yeah.
I see his stuff in New Orleans and in the CVS, and then it's on the wine list over at like a pretty decent restaurant next door. And I'm like, okay, if you can do it,
right.
Why not me?
Yeah, then why not?
Yeah.
So tell me about the biggest challenge. What would you say the biggest challenge has been in building this business?
It's definitely like a little bit isolating, which is weirdly actually okay for me, because I don't like really tap into the communities. Like if I walked into a place and was in like New York here in Queens, and nobody, cool wine doesn't get to this neighborhood, but like, in like a hipster wine bar like Ridgewood or something, like I feel that maybe because I'm such a persona, like it's too overwhelming. I don't know. It's just like I'm not effective. Like I used to be a sneaky, like poor person, and I was like really good at like pushing my products on. But now like I'm trying to like figure out, other than like getting picked up at the airport and driven around and put in front of people and giving a good presentation and like connecting with them, like I don't have like my own like sales strategy without I don't know. That's been challenging, but what else? It's just been pretty sweet. not drinking too much is always a challenge. Like I didn't drink yesterday. Oh my God, that
Exactly.
was such a, you know, like I actually started making these 500 milliliters because during the pandemic, I would like throw this much of the bottle out before opening it or like before drinking it
Oh.
because I was always joking, like I have much more resolve here than I do here.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So I was
Exactly.
like, 500 milliliters is amazing, but in fact, the cost of bottling it is more expensive because it's not a standard size. And
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
what else? Yeah, like I guess once you hit like a place of kind of you max out your success, like extra growth on top of it is hard. Like 2 years ago, I was growing at like 40%. Like I was going crazy, crazy. Of course, we were new.
Hmm.
And then this year, eking out that like 15%. And it's, yesterday it was like, we were like only up 9%. And then we had like a big, big day. And so we're like, no, we're back up to like, whatever percent, 10,
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
And like depletions and our sales are a totally different number. People ask me all the time, like, yeah, what's your like revenue? I'm like, I don't know. It's like 5.34. But that doesn't mean that that's the revenue of the brand. Like if you
Right.
think about it, you have the wholesalers and the retailers. And so I would guess it's like 20
Yeah.
million in Mary Taylor sales and like the world, the global.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's incredible. And to bootstrap it, I think like that's just, what advice do you have for other entrepreneurs who do not want to take that VC or private equity money? Like,
Yeah.
what were the most effective ways of like building this to that scale?
Yeah. I mean, I have some thoughts on like, first of all, always pay your bills. Like I always pay. I actually have not been paid by people who owe me money. And I've said to them, hey, I noticed like you went on a vacation or like you drive a nice car. Like, why don't you sell your car? Because like to me, this is like probably comes out of like selling weed in the parking lot in high school or whatever, but I'm like really good at collections. But like I'm like, I think that you have to ground yourself as a person of integrity. So if like you're asking for some level of credit from people who don't know you that well, like you have to earn it. And now there's never a question. Like the first thing I do in the morning is like pay every bill that's entered into the system because as much as I can, and I've built that credibility through like European suppliers call each other and I have like great credit. And so that's been really important. So like I don't like buy a fancy thing or live a luxurious way without. You probably have to be like obsessed, like I kind of miss the obsession because like now things are like pretty good and I'm staying on top of it. But like somebody said it to me like it's probably more in your DNA to drive a pirate ship than a cruise liner,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So like I guess one of our next challenges, well, maybe we'll get to the next challenges next, but what would I advise? Yeah, I mean, don't take big risks. Don't have like the big employees and the salaries and the fancy office chairs. Don't get an office. Forget the office. Like offices are so inefficient. We had one for a year and like hated it.
Yeah.
Nobody could focus there. Hire people that bring you revenue instead of like more support. Like you can do the order board. You can do that. Like you don't need a second. Like now I have great people in great roles that I treat really well and they're not going anywhere, I mean,
yeah.
I feel really blessed about that. But like I start people cheap and they have to earn their way up. Like I said so somebody wanted to get into a role with me that would have been a completely new thing. And I was like, well, I'm not just going to take a full gamble on this like new project, which was like to grow outside, like internationally. I need you to like step into something that's already like, I don't want to take all of the risk. Like I'm not taking on the 100% risk. I'm like, let's meet, somewhere. And if things work out, I can get towards like your compensation, like your ideal compensation and all that. But like, let's take some steps in together.
Right.
So that like you're jumping in with something underneath you,
Yeah.
So Does that help? I don't
Yeah, I mean,
know.
I think that's great advice. Tell me about U.S. wines or products. So I saw something on the website about Revival Cider Co.
Yeah.
Tell me about that and about doing any sort of products from the U.S.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of okay with I okay. I distribute American wine. Like Anthony Truchard is one of my favorite people in the world. We have a wholesale company in Connecticut. That's like our test kitchen market. It's really sweet. Um, so I am not anti-American wine, but Mary Taylor wine is a exploration of the old world. So that's really important. And also, like, I was quoted in the New York Times saying, like, you can't get a Malioco in America because that's only grown in Calabria. Like, I was like, if that's not the snootiest thing I've ever said. But I'm not I'd be happy to like start, and I even have like kind of a semi like private label project in the Sierra foothills. So like I'm not opposed to the business of wine in America. But as a terroirist, I was thinking long and hard about what is American like by like virtue. And I was like, cider, it's like
Yeah.
either it's tobacco or it's cider, or like what is some of our like crops that we kind of like curated and made ours. And I was like, cider is part of the American story from a long, long time ago. And we have like from like not just America, like North, like Canada,
Yeah.
such a long legacy. And I was like, there's all these heritage varietals. So I found a guy in the old Mission Peninsula who like had, some fruit and like a little farmhouse. And we did like our first project in beta, sold out, completely
Wow.
gone. And now I've actually brought my marketing person on in the role of like cider master. So
Wow.
she is going to help like really develop this project. I've trademarked the label and the company, and like it's the beginning of growing something. And I want to kind of give like my younger peers a shot to grow it with my guidance, because like I had a baby already, and it's a big one. So this is like a new baby, and we're gonna see if we can make a go at this. All in the effort, because my ultimate fantasy is to have a farm to table growth, like little market brand, like that I have all over the country, where it's just like a really fabulous place to get local food. So that's kind of like where I want to go to with
Oh,
the
amazing.
success of these
Yeah.
wine and cider projects.
So
But yeah.
essentially it's not just wine, also cider, but could be more products down the line.
Well, no, just like I like the idea of scale.
Yeah.
Oh, that's important. Scale. So like like Mary Taylor wine is infinitely scalable. I have 47 wines. I could have 700, but
Right.
I mean, that would require a full shelf at every store everywhere across the world. Which, we're angling towards. But no, I just like have always had this fantasy of like a farm to table convenience store kind of brand that has like one model. I like studied how Domino's pizza came. That's the problem with the MBA. They just like get your wheels turning.
Totally.
And I was like, why can't we do this with like local independent farm food that you can go like I spend some of the year in Louisiana, and there's like really good produce down there. There's like great strawberries. There's great farmers markets, but I can only get to the farmers market from like 2 to 6 on Thursday. And I'm like, oh, like I just want to shop. Like, why isn't there a farmers market store open 7 days a week in the French Quarter? I can like stop by and pick up like my stuff,
Yeah.
What? And then I'm like, that's like the next gaping hole in this like food and wine world, I think, something like that.
Awesome.
That's my fantasy land. I know I digress.
I love that.
That's why you should buy a Mary Taylor wine, because we'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. We'll fund this other amazing project as well.
Yeah.
Well, what else is next? What's next for Mary Taylor Wines?
Yeah, I mean, the joy that I get in like supporting these earnest growers, and like last year we had a tour to Amtrak. We went from DC, like they all flew over, and we went DC to Portland, Maine. And they all created like bonds with each other, which was amazing. I just really appreciated like just I want to keep these wineries independent and small. Like I'm not trying to be, like a Jadot or something. Like keep them small, keep them independent, let them enjoy like having access to our brand. I think that like the rest of the world needs to know about the project. I think we have like Asia. I mean, this tariff threat is pretty real, and like part of the trying to mitigate it is like kind of look elsewhere. But I have to say, like, I work in other markets, and there's no market like the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the place to play ball. So like, just the amount of commerce we have around in wine, and I mean, it's just it's a lot of other markets are very timid and small, and it takes a lot of effort, and there's so much paperwork and regulatory. So yeah, I'm just kind of figuring out if I can have a go at the like international thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, but again, I don't want to like throw a couple $100,000 at that and lose it all. So
right.
So there's the international. I'm also like, I have my like personal story is pretty crazy. So I was told like sit down and write that thing out. So I'd like to do that. I have almost a policy master at Georgetown that I was given as a scholarship because of my like tariff work, and not that it was that successful, but I'm trying. So like I don't know if that means having something to say about like U.S. agriculture, U.S. trade, foreign, blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
I'd like to learn a lot. Like I'm 47, and so I'm only half. So I have like another double of my life to go, and I think like just using my noggin a little bit more on like bigger and broader issues. I just can't sit still though. That's
yeah.
And so I don't know what's next, or I feel really, really blessed that I got here, and I just hope that the federal government doesn't take it all away. But we'll get to that another time.
Fingers crossed on as this evolves. All right. So last question. So a drinks entrepreneur asks you for a book or a movie, online class, person to follow on LinkedIn, whatever it might be, that would provide the greatest insight. Who or what would you recommend?
Yeah, good question. I read a lot of economics. I read the Supply Lines newsletter every morning on Bloomberg. It's a great newsletter. But I'm so into trade.
Yeah.
So like I live. I could show you at Rockaway Beach, and I can see the ocean, and I can see the steamship liners coming in and out full of containers.
Wow.
And it's like trade surplus deficit, like thinking about the broader global issue. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if she's writing a blog, but I had this strategy professor at Stern named Sonia Marciano, and like she just really like helped us talk through like all these company strategies that I thought all these companies were like so well funded, so smart, brightest minds, but like really they all like took wrong turns, and all the places where they failed and how did they recoup. Learning that stuff, like we read a lot of like Harvard business cases, and I know that sounds a little pretentious, but like I learned a lot from that.
Totally.
I read a lot of psychological and self-help, how to love yourself books. Like that's kind of like my journey, personal journey. So that's probably where I like, if I'm putting my headphones on, I'm like doing something more like internal and like self-love. Cause I think a lot of like really really, really hardworking people are doing it in a way to like avoid something else. And that's me.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I've always been that way. And so like, I think also people in the business of drinks are maybe, I didn't get in the wine business because I don't like drinking wine,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like looking at like the root causes of maybe wanting to like kind of numb yourself out, like with overwork or alcohol or whatever, like, I think like just looking at that stuff is great. Right. So I listen to a lot of like gurus and self-help and do like meditations and stuff. So,
yeah.
But I am reading Madame Pommery, a book that my friend Melanie Young gave me to read. It's like the story of the widow of Pommery, which doesn't get as much press is the Veuve Clicquot,
Nice, nice.
So I was reading that. That's on my table right now.
Oh, that's so fun. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is a lot. I'll
Yeah.
look for some links to put in the show notes about all of those things.
Okay.
But I think that's a great place for us to conclude. So, Mary, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
The
you.
Business of Drinks. This has been super
I appreciate
fun.
the attention. Yeah, right on. All right. Thank you, Erica. Good to see you.
Welcome back to Last Call. Today, Scott says he has a quiz for us.
All right. So, have either of you or both of you heard of, Two Truths and a Lie?
Yes.
Game?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So I thought I'd do this, which is I looked over a bunch of 2025, industry predictions, and I came up with a list. And I'm going to read you, three kind of headlines or three predictions, and you're going to tell me which one is the false one, if you can. So
Okay.
Let's dive in. We'll start with what I think is an easy one, but we'll see. This is from Wine Enthusiast. How we will drink in 2025. Kara Newman had about 12 predictions. So here's three. Okay. Number one, the minimalist drink might have a moment. The idea here is that, drinks are going to get back to less complicated garnishes and be a little bit more classic in style, less immersive elements. Okay. The next one is forget zebra striping, try lion taming. And, zebra striping is this idea of alternating between non-alc and alcoholic beverages. Lion taming, she predicts, she says, this is a drink that started at some Ivy League schools where you try a tablespoon of a high proof liqueur or spirit, 60% ABV or higher. Not behavior we condone, but she's saying, lion taming will become a thing. And lastly, we'll have the need for speed, the idea that RTDs will become more popular on premise, alcohol vending machines, cocktails on tap. So which of those is fake?
This is tough for me. I feel like I need a clarification on the lion taming. That's just like doing small doses of high proof alcohol.
That is right.
Okay. So the speed one, that makes sense to me just in terms of what I know about what has been going on in restaurants the past few years. I know that, staffing has been more difficult and perhaps ease is paramount. So I'll say that's true. I don't think I believe the lion taming thing. That sounds hilarious. So I'll say that one's false. And the first one was true.
Okay. Erica, agree, disagree? Where are you at?
So I will start with the minimalist drinking. I think that is definitely true because I do see so many more highballs and simple cocktails, just like 2-ingredient or 3-ingredient cocktails on cocktail menus. And so I think that one definitely, I do see a lot of that happening. And the RTDs with like RTD vending machines, we're seeing more RTD cans and bottles in bars. I am already seeing a lot of that, and I have seen data around that. So I do believe that is true. The lion taming, while I love the concept of like going from zebra striping to lion taming, I can't say that I have yet heard of that. So if that is true, that will be news to me. Scott, what's the lie?
You are both correct. I completely made lion taming up. I had a blast doing it.
It's clever, though.
It is. I love that.
I almost edited my answer. I was like, sounds like something I would have done in college.
I know. I mean, like a tablespoon of like a high proof thing. I was like, yeah, I could see that. But I know I've seen data around the other ones and articles about them. So I figured I'd just go with the safest choices.
We'll see. Maybe a self-fulfilling prophecy for 2026 with our, thousands of listeners taking it to heart. Okay. So
we might have just started lion taming. All right. What's next, Scott?
Okay. So now we've got punches. What drink trends should disappear in 2025. So this is where Punch interviews a bunch of bar and industry professionals, and they say, what trends should disappear? So in this instance, I'm going to give you 3 trends, and one of them they say should stay. Okay, so you've got to guess which trend the industry professionals want to stay. Okay, so
Got it.
number 1, hi-fi bars everywhere. Have you noticed that seemingly every city has a new bar with a heavy focus on its sound system? Okay. Number 2, hop water. The non-alcoholic, not quite beer, not quite seltzer is taking over. And finally, dirty everything. It's not just for martinis anymore. Dirty Negronis, highballs, and more are popping up too. So which one did the industry professionals say should stay?
Which one do they want to stay?
Yeah.
I think they want the hi-fi bars to stay.
And Caroline?
I'm stumped here because I'm having a difficulty distinguishing what I want to stay and what industry professionals want to stay. I want dirty everything to stay. But I think I have to agree with Erica with the hi-fi bars. Like what's not to like about that, honestly? A great sound system, bumping music, vibes are high, people are drinking more. I'd say I would want that to stay.
Well, I've got bad news. There seems to be consensus that folks do not want hi-fi bars everywhere anymore.
Really?
Yeah, they think they should go. Yeah, a lot of folks don't have a problem with it per se, but bartenders want to be bartenders, it seems, and not sound engineers. And therein might lie the issue. So, and plenty are happy to just put on a playlist via their, Spotify and not worry about the particulars, really focus on the cocktails. So excellent. We've got.
What you're saying is the bars don't want to hire a sound engineer. And that's the issue.
Yeah.
That's an additional expense. So yeah, cut that line item out.
Okay.
All right.
One last trend report. Now, this is from a design blog called The Die Line. It's their 2025 trend report. I'm going to read 3 trends that relate to packaging in general, but drinks certainly as well. And you let me know which one I made up. So, number 1, Kirkland copycats. In the face of ever persistent inflation, brands will be copying Costco's signature design aesthetic. Okay. Number 2, the Utah effect. This is brought about by the show The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, basically bringing forward the idea that, it's okay to have traditional soda, to have a 44-ounce soda mixed in with, additional flavors. Basically, standing in the face of probiotic, adaptogenic, health-forward sodas. And finally, vibestalgia. This is the essence of nostalgia visualized. So here it's about warm colors, saturated palettes, tactile visuals. Brands like Gia, Moon Juice, Lark, 1906 exemplify this. So which of those trends is fake?
So I know the vibestalgia is real. Almost every new CPG brand I see is like vibestalgic to me. I didn't know that word existed until right now, and I'm so happy that I know now. So I have to say that's real. It's the fonts, it's the colors, it's made for the most nostalgic generation. I'm doing air quotes. Gen Z. I learned that recently too. I have to imagine this is really hard. I have to imagine you made up the Utah effect. And simply because I like the idea of you coming up with that. You know, can you clarify the Kirkland thing? Like actually copycatting the branding or copycatting having just a bunch of generic stuff?
Yeah, it's basically like not trying to, as I'm understanding it, like it's copying like the branding, like not overdoing, no ornate label, like really kind of white background. It's vodka. It's got like maybe sans serif font or something like that. But yeah, basically really basic branding.
I'm sticking to my guns then. I think that and Vibestalgia are going head to head, but are both trends. And I'm saying the Utah effect, excuse me, is fake. What about you, Erica?
Yeah, I'll jump on with that. I mean, I think I do see some of this like very simple like proletariat sort of like we are taking down the sort of like highfalutin design of certain brands, and I do see like some more just very basic branding, like no frills, not fancy, not hard, not conceptual, just like the bare facts. And I do see some of that, and then I definitely see the vibe nostalgia. I think that whole concept seems alive and well, especially in the CPG space. The Utah effect, that's funny, and the only reason I think maybe I wouldn't think that is because it was kind of in juxtaposition to all the probiotic sodas. And I know that even like Coke and all of these big brands are now getting into the probiotic space. So while I do think that there are probably a lot of people who drink like those big 44-ounce, like, jugs of soda out there, I don't know that that will be a big comeback. So I would say that that is fake.
Okay, well, I've got bad news for you again. I I
No!
I made up the Kirkland copycat trend. Now, maybe that,
Ugh.
no frills aesthetic is in the zeitgeist, which is why maybe I made it up. But the guy line does specifically call out both Vibestalgia and the Utah effect. To the point of the Utah effect, they cite examples. There's places like Swig, which is a Utah-based soda drive-in where you can get mix-ins that are known as dirty sodas. They mention Dr. Pepper and Coffee Mate working on a coconut lime flavor liquid creamer dubbed dirty soda. So that's kind
Whoa.
of, I know, mind blown.
Oh my gosh, this is the first I've heard of this. I mean, they do have dirty sodas even in Manhattan. Like I've seen them popping up more and more. But I think my concept of what that was like these huge sodas with like these big format products, and then just like pouring more stuff in there. But it sounds like what you're talking about is more of like a customization, like you can customize, you can take a base product like Coke and customize it how you want. Is that the
Yeah,
concept?
they're not saying it's one thing. It's the return of traditional soda. It's the return, or it's the idea of customization. It's the idea that you might go to a place that specifically focuses or serves soda. So it's all of the
Interesting.
above that they're
Yeah.
dubbing the
Yeah.
Utah effect.
That's so funny. I definitely have not heard that.
Well, we'll see
Me
if it
either.
becomes true, right? This is a prediction.
All right. Well, on that note, we are all going to be tracking the Utah effect. See y'all soon.